Friday, everyone. This week we're talking about the Mandela Effect, what it is, where it comes from, and why science may or may not be able to explain it. If you're new here, I'm Zayna, and I explain the weirder things happening in our world. So if you'd like more videos like this, hit that subscribe button, and if you would like to stay in tune with our strange world, tap that notification bell. The Mandela Effect is a phenomenon where a large group of people remember a sequence of events differently than how they actually occurred. In 2009, the term was coined by Fiona Broom, who created a website detailing her memories of former South African President Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 1980s. She remembered news coverage of this event and even a speech from his widow about his death. To make things more interesting, she wasn't the only one. Through her website, she found a whole group of people who also had the same memories as her. However, Nelson Mandela did not die in the 1980s. He served 27 years in prison before becoming the president of South Africa from 1994 to 1999 and then dying in 2013. At least that's what most of us remember and what's written down in our history books. As a result of this whole phenomenon, the Mandela Effect was born. The first example that I have for you guys is the Berenstain Bears versus the Berenstein Bears. If any of you have ever encountered the Mandela Effect before, this is the classic go-to example of it because most people remember it as the Berenstein Bears, including myself, whereas apparently it's always been the Berenstain Bears. I have zero belief that it ever started out as the Berenstain Bears, and whoever went back and decided that, oh, actually we should change it to the Berenstain Bears from the Berenstein Bears should be arrested. Next up, we have the Monopoly guy, aka Pennybags, aka I've never heard this guy's name in my life and just learned it when I was researching for this video. And apparently everyone thinks that he wears a monocle. Again, including myself. Turns out this man does not wear a monocle. He is literally a monocleless man. He just likes his money, likes running around in his top hat. That is his only accessory. Next up, we have Curious George. Does he have a tail? Does he not have a tail? Personally, I do not think he ever had a tail, and turns out that's what most people think. But there is a group of people that do believe that Curious George had a tail at some point. Next up, we've got Looney Tunes versus Looney Tunes. Again, I thought it was always like the cartoon tunes, but there are some people who think that it was Looney Tunes, and I would love to meet one of you. Now we have Pikachu. Did he have a black thing on his tail, or did he not have a black thing on his tail? Again, I'm team black thing on your tail, but apparently that's not true. I cannot get behind this one because Tank Man is an icon. His whole thing is that he stood up to some tanks, they left him alone, and he just walked away. But apparently, in some people's memories, Tank Man was run over and killed. He was not, luckily, at least in our history books. Tank Man was not run over and killed. I have the video right here, you can watch it. Tank Man clearly lives, he walks away with his bags, goes and lives his best life, and hopefully dies at a very, very old age, happily. Bottom line, he was not run over. And finally, we have Fruit Loops versus Fruit Loops. Was it the traditional way of spelling fruit, or was it two O's to match the loops? Personally, I think that it was always the two O's, which is what are, again, if you look it up on the internet, it's always been two O's. But I named my dead and gone cat Fruit Loops, so I know that it was always two O's. But then again, I have not been able to spell literally my entire life, so maybe it was just my poor spelling skills that led to my cat's name. Coming from a scientific viewpoint, there is a very simple explanation for the Mandela Effect. It's proof of something called collective false memories, when a large group of people remember something one way, when all physical evidence points another way. Another possible explanation for the Mandela Effect is something called confabulation or honest lying. It's when someone is not intending to lie or deceive others, but is instead filling the gaps in their own memory by creating false memories. Returning to the example of the Monopoly man's monocle, Dr. Gene Brewer, an associate professor in cognitive psychology at Arizona State University, says, when you recall an event, you use memories around it, taking elements or pieces of other events and fitting them where they make sense. In the case of Pennybags, people appear to be combining his depiction with that of Mr. Peanut, the Planters mascot who wears a monocle. That's because our brain can take different subjects with similar traits and blend them together. Dr. Brewer continues, saying, in studies when you show participants word pairs and ask them to remember blackmail and jailbird, half of them will later say they remember learning the word blackbird. But what about in the case of the Berenstain Bears, where almost everyone is in agreement that it was never the Berenstain Bears, it was always the Berenstein Bears? According to Brewer, it's likely because kids may have seen the name misspelled in newspaper articles or in handwritten references from other kids or adults. It's a self-perpetuating problem. There were studies in the 1980s that showed when students were exposed to misspelled words in an education setting as a way to test their spelling proficiency, the misspelled words got recorded in their memory and interfered with their ability to spell the words correctly in the future. Okay, so if you've made it this far, then maybe you're not 100% 100% on board with the scientific explanation for the Mandela effect. And to you, I say, maybe it's not something that science can explain. Maybe the Mandela effect is the result of shifting universes. Some people believe that the Mandela effect is a direct result of a CERN experiment in Switzerland where they're experimenting on dark matter and black holes, whereas others point to the idea that scientists have recently, and by recently I mean finally publicly, announced that they've found something called fermion masses, which allow them to communicate, in a sense, with the fifth dimension. So now that they basically have portals to the fifth dimension that they've recently discovered, what about all the portals that they haven't discovered? To further build on this theory, there are a lot of things that have happened since the beginning of 2021 that people are attributing to us shifting timelines, shifting realities, shifting universes, whatever you want to call it. The big giant New Year's Eve ball that drops every year dropped an entire minute late, which has never happened in its entire history. A lot of our technology and like Snapchat filters and stuff were not able to figure out what time it was for a while. For example, one of the Snapchat filters thought that Christmas was in like, what, 59 days? When Christmas had happened 5 days ago. So there were at least 360 days to go before Christmas. And one of the ones that I think are very important is that we lost a giant, massive black hole. No one knows where it went. Did it disappear? Did we shift realities and it didn't exist in this reality? Nobody knows. And finally, there was a giant space hurricane that was recently discovered. Okay, I'll admit I have no idea if the space hurricane has to do with anything, but we didn't have space hurricanes before 2021, and now we suddenly have space hurricanes that are raining electrons. Everyone thought that we've switched dimensions, so do with this space hurricane information what you will. Thanks for watching. Black matter and dark holes. That's not right.